Subscribe now, because when a ruthless gang tried to desecrate the wrong tomb, they discovered too late that the quiet guard standing in their way was a ghost from their worst nightmares, a man forged in the shadows of war who had vowed never to fight again, until they forced his hand. The graveyard sat on the edge of the city like a silent wound, its iron gates rusted, its paths cracked and overgrown, and its silence so thick it swallowed even the wind, and most nights no one came near it, except for the lone black tomb guard, a man the locals knew only as Elijah, tall, quiet, stoic, moving through the rows of headstones with the heavy steps of a man carrying too much weight in his soul, a man people dismissed as nothing more than a caretaker for the forgotten dead. But what they didn't know, what even those who greeted him politely in daylight could never imagine, was that Elijah was no ordinary man but a former Delta Force commander who had spent years in the shadows of foreign wars, leading missions no one would ever admit happened, missions where he learned to kill silently, vanish without a trace, and bury memories so deep they haunted him in every dream, and he had left that life behind after a mission went wrong, leaving his brothers dead and his heart broken, so he vanished into anonymity, choosing the peace of guarding graves over the chaos of war, until one night when the wrong men picked the wrong place to strike, and the sleeping warrior inside him awoke like a storm, because fate had a cruel way of dragging old ghosts back into the light. The gang came just after midnight, headlights cutting through the fog, 5 cars pulling up to the cemetery gates, music blaring, laughter cruel, and when the engines died the silence returned with a menace. Their leader Marcus, a tattooed brute with eyes that burned like greed itself, pointing to the mausoleum deep in the graveyard where rumor had it a wealthy family had been buried with gold, jewels, even antique weapons, and tonight the gang would dig, rob, and desecrate without mercy, because to them the dead were nothing but obstacles, and the guard nothing but a shadow to scare children. But as they pushed through the gates Elijah was already watching, standing in the dark by an angel statue, his coat blending into the shadows, his eyes narrowed, his breath steady, his instincts from war whispering warnings in his blood, and though every part of him wanted to walk away, to let the world destroy itself, he remembered his promise to the cemetery's priest, that no matter what, he would protect the sanctity of this place, because to him the dead were not forgotten. They were soldiers, mothers, fathers, children, resting in eternal peace, and peace was something he had sworn to defend, even if it meant breaking his vow of silence. The gang spread out, laughing, one of them smashing bottles against tombstones, another spray painting curses across marble angels, their disrespect echoing like gunfire in Elijah's ears, and Marcus lit a cigarette, the glow briefly illuminating his face as he barked orders, sending 2 men to scout the back wall, 2 more to guard the cars, and the rest to pry open the mausoleum doors. But when the crowbars screeched against the steel hinges, Elijah stepped forward, his boots crunching the gravel, his silhouette rising like a phantom in the mist, and his deep voice carried through the silence, "Leave them rest, and walk away." And for a moment the men froze, then burst out laughing, mocking him, calling him old man, weak man, fool, and Marcus sneered, "This ain't your place, old man, it's ours tonight." But Elijah didn't flinch, didn't waver. He just stared at them with the eyes of a soldier who had seen death too many times, and something in that stare made even the boldest of them hesitate, though they hid it with bravado, stepping closer, brandishing knives, one pulling out a pistol to scare him, and Marcus spat, "Move or we'll put you in the ground with the rest of them." But Elijah didn't move, didn't blink, he just whispered, "Then try," and that was the moment the night turned. The first thug lunged with his knife, sloppy, fueled by arrogance, and Elijah moved faster than their eyes could follow, grabbing his wrist, twisting until bone snapped, then driving the man into a headstone so hard it cracked, the sound making the others recoil in disbelief, because no old man should move like that, no guard should break bones like glass. But before they could process it, another thug swung his bat, only for Elijah to sidestep, grab the bat, and use its momentum to send the thug crashing into the wrought iron fence, ribs snapping on impact, and the laughter stopped, replaced by stunned silence, until Marcus roared for them to kill him, and the cemetery erupted in chaos. Gunfire lit the night, bullets shattering angels, ripping through stone, sparks flying as they hit iron, but Elijah vanished into the shadows, moving like he was back on the battlefield, every tombstone becoming cover, every path a trap, and one by one he struck, pulling a man into the dark with a chokehold until silence claimed him, disarming another and using his own knife against him, the screams muffled by the fog, until the gang realized they weren't hunting, they were prey, and the guard they mocked was no guard at all but something far deadlier. Marcus grew furious, shouting, firing wildly, trying to draw Elijah out, but Elijah was patient, a predator, his breathing steady, his mind cold, every instinct sharpened, and as he watched them panic he felt the old him awaken. The commander who had once led men through deserts at night, who had once cut through enemy ranks without hesitation, and for a moment he feared how natural it felt to kill again, but he pushed it down, reminding himself this was not war, this was justice, this was defense, and he would not let these men desecrate the peace of the dead. One of the gang members, young, trembling, barely older than 20, tried to flee, sprinting for the cars, but before he could reach the gate Elijah stepped into his path, silent as death, and the boy froze, dropping his gun, whispering, "Please, man, I didn't sign up for this," and Elijah stared at him, seeing the same fear he had seen in enemy child soldiers overseas, and for a brief moment he softened, telling the boy to run, to never come back, and the boy bolted, leaving his comrades behind, a decision that would haunt Marcus when he realized loyalty had crumbled, but Elijah didn't care. He wasn't here to kill boys, he was here to stop monsters. Marcus, enraged, gathered the survivors, now only 4, and swore he would gut Elijah and bury him alive, and in desperation he dragged out his trump card, a grenade he had kept for intimidation, now ready to use it to blow the mausoleum open and take Elijah with it, but Elijah saw it coming, his instincts screaming, and as Marcus pulled the pin Elijah charged from the dark, faster than the gang leader thought possible, slamming his arm against a gravestone, forcing the grenade from his hand, and in the struggle it rolled across the ground, hissing, seconds from detonation, and Elijah shoved Marcus away, diving as the grenade exploded, fire and stone erupting, sending bodies flying, and when the smoke cleared the cemetery was shattered, headstones broken, statues toppled, but Elijah rose slowly from the dust, burned but unbroken, and the gang lay scattered, groaning, some unconscious, Marcus crawling with rage in his eyes, spitting blood. Screaming that this wasn't over, that he would come back with more men, bigger guns, but Elijah stepped forward, towering over him, pressing his boot against his chest, and whispered with the calm of a man who had already buried too many enemies, "You come back, and I'll make sure you stay here, permanently." And for the first time Marcus felt real fear, not of a guard, not of a man, but of the ghost of war itself, and though he tried to mask it with hatred, his shaking hands betrayed him. Sirens wailed in the distance, someone had called the cops after hearing the explosion, and as the flashing lights approached Elijah melted back into the shadows, vanishing like a spirit, leaving the gang broken, their leader trembling, and when the officers asked what happened, Marcus could only stammer about a demon in the cemetery, a monster in human form, and they laughed, arresting him, thinking it was just gang delirium, but in the graveyard whispers began to spread, stories of the tomb guard who wasn't a guard at all, who walked among the dead not because he was weak but because he was stronger than anyone could imagine, and though Elijah returned to his rounds the next night, silent, unseen, the fog curling around him like old war smoke, he knew the peace would never truly return, because once the past is awakened, it never goes back to sleep, and deep inside, the commander waited, ready for the next time the living tried to disturb the dead.